There are still places on Earth where the modern world has never truly arrived. Places without roads, without internet, without outside contact. And in the middle of the Bay of Bengal lies one of the most isolated places on the planet, North Sentinel Island. For centuries, the people living there have rejected all contact with the outside world. They defend their island with bows, arrows, and complete silence. No tourism is allowed. No visitors are welcome. Even approaching the shoreline is illegal. To many, North Sentinel Island feels like a mystery frozen in time. But the deeper researchers looked into its history, the clearer something became. This is not a story about a lost tribe. It is a story about a boundary humanity was never meant to cross. Deep within India's Andaman archipelago lives a community known as the Sentinelese, one of the last uncontacted peoples on Earth. Anthropologists believe they may have lived in isolation for thousands of years. Their language remains completely unclassified, and even neighboring Andamanese groups cannot fully understand it. Almost everything about their daily lives remains unknown. They hunt, fish, and gather food from the island and surrounding reefs. They build narrow canoes for shallow waters and live without modern technology, electricity, or written language. Yet despite centuries of colonial expansion, global trade, satellites, and the internet age, the Sentinelese have maintained complete independence from the outside world. And they have protected that independence fiercely. Today, the Indian government enforces a strict exclusion zone around North Sentinel Island. Entering the surrounding waters is illegal, and the island is monitored by the Indian Coast Guard and Navy.
The purpose is not only to protect outsiders from the Sentinelese, but to protect the Sentinelese from us. Because history has shown exactly what happens when that boundary is ignored.
One of the earliest known contact attempts took place in 1880 during British colonial rule. A British naval officer named Maurice Vidal Portman arrived on the island with an armed expedition, driven by the colonial obsession with studying isolated peoples. After searching abandoned villages, his team captured an elderly Sentinelese couple and 4 children and transported them to Port Blair. What happened next was tragic. Having lived in isolation for generations, the Sentinelese had little immunity to outside diseases. The elderly man and woman quickly became ill and died. Portman eventually returned the children to the island with gifts. But historians and anthropologists believe this encounter may have caused irreversible damage. Even a simple illness carried by outsiders could have spread through the community with devastating consequences.
Years later, Portman himself admitted the expedition had likely done little more than increase the Sentinelese fear and hostility toward outsiders. And if that distrust already existed before, this encounter may have permanently sealed it.
In August 1981, a cargo ship called the MV Primrose ran aground on the coral reefs surrounding North Sentinel Island during a storm. At first, the stranded crew believed they had survived the worst. But within days, they noticed movement along the shoreline. Dozens of Sentinelese warriors emerged from the jungle, carrying bows, arrows, and spears. From the deck,
the crew watched as canoes approached the ship through the shallow waters. Fearing an attack, the captain radioed for emergency assistance and even requested weapons to defend the crew if necessary.
For several days, the sailors stood guard with makeshift tools, while rough seas prevented the Sentinelese from reaching the vessel. Eventually, an Indian military helicopter evacuated the crew safely. The wreck remained behind. Over time, the Sentinelese dismantled parts of the ship and repurposed the metal into tools and arrowheads, adapting pieces of the outside world without ever joining it. The message was unmistakable. North Sentinel Island was not open to visitors.
Not every encounter ended in violence. Beginning in the late 1960s, Indian anthropologist T.N. Pandit led a series of carefully controlled expeditions intended to observe the Sentinelese from a distance and leave gifts such as coconuts on the shore. For years, the tribe responded with suspicion and hostility. But in 1991, something extraordinary happened. For the first time, members of the Sentinelese approached visitors without weapons.
They entered the shallow water and accepted coconuts directly from the anthropologists by hand. It was one of the only known moments of peaceful direct contact in recorded history. Even then, however, the boundary remained clear. The Sentinelese allowed the exchange, but made no invitation for outsiders to come closer. Eventually, Indian authorities ended these contact missions entirely, recognizing the enormous danger that even peaceful interaction could bring. A single virus, flu infection, or bacterial disease could threaten the survival of the entire community. The decision was made to leave the Sentinelese alone.
In 2018, North Sentinel Island returned to global headlines after the death of 26-year-old American missionary John Allen Chau. Chau believed it was his mission to bring Christianity to the Sentinelese, despite knowing the journey was illegal and extremely dangerous. According to his journal entries, he secretly paid fishermen to take him close to the island before paddling toward shore alone in a kayak. His first encounters ended badly. The Sentinelese shouted at him, fired arrows, and forced him to retreat.
Yet Chau continued trying to return. In one of his final journal entries, he wrote, "God, I don't want to die." On November 17th, 2018, he attempted contact again. He never returned. Fishermen later reported seeing his body being dragged across the beach before being buried by the tribe. Indian authorities ultimately chose not to recover the body, fearing that any recovery mission could trigger violence or expose the Sentinelese to deadly pathogens. The tragedy became a global reminder of a reality many people still struggle to accept. Some places are isolated for a reason. North Sentinel Island is often described as mysterious, but perhaps the real mystery is why the modern world still struggles to respect isolation. The Sentinelese have made their position clear for generations. They have rejected contact repeatedly and defended their island every time outsiders approached. And there are powerful reasons to respect that choice. The greatest danger is disease. Communities that remain isolated for thousands of years can lack immunity to illnesses the rest of the world considers minor. Even accidental exposure could trigger catastrophic epidemics.
History has already shown this happening to other indigenous Andaman tribes after sustained outside contact. But beyond biology, there is a deeper issue: the right to self-determination. The Sentinelese are not relics of the past or a puzzle waiting to be solved. They are a living community that has chosen to remain separate from the outside world. And perhaps, for the first time in history, humanity is beginning to understand that not every unknown place needs to be explored. Some boundaries exist for a reason.
North Sentinel Island remains one of the last true enigmas on Earth. An island untouched by globalization, protected not by walls or armies, but by distance, silence, and absolute refusal. And maybe that is why the mystery fascinates us so deeply. Because in a world where satellites can map almost every corner of the planet, North Sentinel Island reminds us that there are still places humanity does not fully understand.
And perhaps never will. What do you think? Should isolated tribes like the Sentinelese remain completely untouched by the modern world? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Watch next: The Lost Manuscript of Atlantis. Ancient knowledge hidden beneath the sea. Or continue the mystery in the playlist Ancient Civilizations Revealed. Think, discover, uncover. Sensei Mystery.